everyone, I am Ms. Megha Karwal, Department of Civil Engineering from Praveen Patil College of Diploma Engineering and Technology, Bhayindar. I warmly welcome to all of you in today's lecture. So in today's lecture, we are going to start permanent way. The combination of rails fitted on sleeper with the help of fixtures and fastening and resting on ballast and subgrade is called as a railway track or permanent way. The finished or complete track of a railway line is commonly known as a permanent way, and it is essentially consists of the three parts: rails, sleepers and ballast. The main purpose of permanent way is to provide safe and quick movement between two stations. Next is ideal requirement of a permanent way. The level of both rails should be same. It should resist lateral forces and vertical stiffness. Okay, gradient should be easy and uniform. The gauge of permanent way should be uniform and correct. The curve position of the track, proper elevation should be provided between outer rails to inner rails. It means the super elevation on curve should be properly designed. Alignment should be correct. Joints crossing should be properly designed and maintained. Track should have electricity. This is a typical cross section of permanent way, and also this diagram showing component parts of permanent way. So component parts of a railway track is: first is formation or subgrade, second is ballast, third is slipper, and fourth is rails, and fifth is fixtures and fastening. Main important topic is rail gauge. What is rail gauge? The rail gauge is clear horizontal distance between the inner faces of the two rails forming a track is known as a gauge. See in the figure given below. So the different gauges prevalent in India are of the following this type. First is broad gauge, second is meter gauge, and third is narrow gauge. Broad gauge. The clear horizontal distance between the top in face of the two rails forming the track is 1.676 meter. The gauge is called broad gauge. This gauge is called as a standard gauge, meter gauge. The clear horizontal distance between the top inner faces of the two rails forming a track is 1 meter. This gauge is known as or called as a meter gauge, and it is suitable when the fund available for railway projects are inadequate and prospect of railway are very high. Next is narrow gauge. The clear horizontal distance between the top inner faces of the two rails forming a track is 0.762 meter or 0.610 meter. The gauge is called as a narrow gauge. Okay. The next is the factors affecting selection of gauge. First is cost of construction. The cost of earthwork, ballast, sleepers, rails, etc. should increase with the increases in a gauge width. जैसे आपका गेज का डिस्टेंस बढ़ेगा, विड्थ बढ़ेगा, वैसे उसका कॉस्ट जो है वो भी बढ़ेगा. कंस्ट्रक्शन कॉस्ट जो है वो इंक्रीज होगा. There is a little increases in acquisition of land of permanent track with increase in a gauge. Next is volume and nature of traffic. It is evident with the greater traffic volume and greater load carrying capacity. The train should be run by better traction techniques. Next is development of area. Narrow gauge can be used to develop the thinly populated area by joining them with the populated or developed or urban areas. Physical feature of the country. Use of narrow gauge is warranted in a hilly region where the broad and meter gauge are not possible due to the steep gradient and sharpness. Okay, then speed of movement. The speed of train is almost proportional to the gauge. The speed is functionally function of diameter of wheels, which is turns is limited by the gauge. The wheel gauge diameter is generally 0.75 times that of gauge. Load speed discourages the customers, and so for maintaining the high speeds broad gauges are preferred. Next is types of rails. First, what is a rails? Rail is a rolled steel section laid end to end in two parallel lines over the sleeper to form a railway track are known as a rail. They are made of the high carbon steel to withstand wear and tear. Okay, so first types of rail. In a railway engineering, there are three types of rail are used in the construction of railway track, which is discussed in below. First is double-headed rail, second is bull-headed rail, and third is flat-footed rail. So what is first functions of rail? To provide a hard, strong surface of movement of train. Next is to provide smooth surface for movement of train with minimum tractive resistance. Next is to bear the stress developed in the track due to heavy wheels loads and lateral and braking forces, and also due to the variation of temperature. To transmit the axle loads of the trains to sleeper, to reduce the pressure on ballast and formation. These are the functions of rails. Now I start types of rail. So first type is double-headed rail. The rail section having their head and foot of the same dimension are known as a double-headed or dumbbell rails. It's also called as DH rails. Okay, these rails have a less strength and stiffness as compared to the flat-footed rails. The idea behind using these rails was that when the head was worn out in the course of time, the rails can be inverted and reused. But as the time passed, the indentions were the formed in the lower table, due to which smooth running over the surface at the top was possible. Next is bull-headed rails, BH rails. Okay, the rail section having their head little thicker than and stronger. Okay, like a bull size. Then the lower part is known as a bull-headed rail. These rails having a less strength, stiffness as compared to flat-footed rails. Bull-headed rails are generally used for constructing points and crossing. Advantages of bull-headed rails: they keep better alignment and give a more solid and smoother track. The rails can be easily removed and replaced quickly, hence the renewals of track is easy. The heavy chairs with the large bearing on sleeper give longer life to wooden sleeper and greater stability to the track. This rail is facilitate easy manufacturing of points and crossing. Disadvantages of bull-headed rails. First is they require costly fastenings. They have a less strength and stiffness, and they require heavy maintenance cost. Next and most important top type of rail is flat-footed rails, FF rails. The rail section having a flat foot are known as a flat-footed rails. These rails have more strength and stiffness as compared to double-headed rails and bull-headed rails. Flat-footed rails are most commonly used in India. Okay, so advantages of flat-footed rails is these rails have a more strength and stiffness. Okay, fitting of rails and sleeper is simpler, so they can be easily laid and relaid. Okay, so no chairs keys are required as in the case of BH rail. Maintenance of points and crossing made with this rail is easy. They give better stability and long life to track and reduce maintenance cost. These rails are less costly than other types of rails. These rails require less number of fastening. Disadvantages of flat-footed rails. This The fitting get loosened more frequently. The strengthening of bent rails, replacing of rails, and dehogging of battered rails are difficult. This rail sink into the wooden sleeper under heavy train load, hence they require bearing plates to overcome this problem. Manufacturing of points and crossing with these rails is difficult. So here is the end of this today's lecture. Thank you.